Welcome to the CitiesR4Living Podcast, an official podcast of the International Project Management Association. Join hosts Dr. Beverly Passian from the Netherlands and Peter Ahmad from South Africa as they explore this world of smart and livable cities. Through the stories and perspectives shared by project managers across the globe, each episode seeks to offer valuable insights, practical advice, and engaging discussions on the latest best practices in the project management field. The CitiesR4Living podcast is for project managers, built environment professionals, and community groups interested in expanding a community of practice, maximizing the impacts of projects across the globe, and enhancing the quality of life for all citizens. Welcome to this episode of the CitiesR4Living podcast. And in this episode, we welcome Peter Braster, a seasoned professional expert in urban development and public sector projects. His extensive journey from New York to Los Angeles and now to Plano in Texas has seen him play a pivotal role in transforming city landscapes and fostering community growth. Peter shares his experiences with urban redevelopment and revitalization, sharing insights on how historic downtowns can be redeveloped to create vibrant, walkable spaces that blend old with the new. He emphasizes the importance of public-private partnerships in driving successful urban projects and highlights the collaborative efforts between both the public and private sectors. Economic development is another key theme Peter discusses, and the strategies for attracting major corporations and supporting the local businesses on both ends of the spectrum to create thriving economic hubs are amongst the main topics of conversation. He also touches on the significance of creating sustainable and inclusive planning, considering gender perspectives and creating spaces that cater to diverse community needs. Technological advancements play a crucial role in urban planning and development, and Peter provides valuable insights into how modern technology, such as the traffic control systems and smart city initiatives, can enhance urban living. This episode makes for essential listening for urban planners, city officials, real estate developers, and for that matter, anybody passionate about creating livable, sustainable, and inclusive cities. So whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out in the field, I'm sure you'll find Peter's insights and experiences will offer valuable lessons and inspiration for us all. As always, we hope you enjoy the episode. So it's just gone 3:30 here in Cape Town. 3:30 up in Utrecht. Beverly, how are you keeping? Are you well?
I'm good. Yes, thank you. I'm very self-conscious now of the mic that I'm using. So if I seem a little delayed in my responses, it's because this Yeti microphone is intimidating me. My goodness.
Each and every episode that we're doing now, you remind me of how more impressive your tech is than mine, and you make me want to feel like I'm in the wrong game. But you keep doing what you're doing, Bev. And as long as you know where the mute button is, I'm happy.
Excellent. I can do that.
Let's see how we can go this time around. And we're going to travel again across the Atlantic Ocean all the way into real cowboy territory, if I'm not mistaken. Cowboy in Dallas way. City of Plano. Welcome, Peter Braster. How are you keeping, Peter? Wonderful to have you here. Just gone about 8:30, your local time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, we're in the morning and it's nice and sunny today. It's going to get a little warm, but it's Texas in September, so.
I'm not wrong about this being big cowboy and football territory, right?
It's definitely, Cowboys is the football team. Dallas is a partner city with Fort Worth. Fort Worth was once the edge of the United States and the West, and it was the gateway to the West for a very long period of time. So Dallas is still a little more to the south in its culture, but Fort Worth is to the west. Although I have to say that Plano is sort of home to South Fork Ranch, which has been made famous by the Dallas. Yeah, I'm about 6 miles away, or, what is that, 12 kilometers away from the ranch, yes.
Wow, a little 1980s pop culture there.
Yeah. Might have to change our theme music for this episode, I think, right?
Oh, we really don't.
Well, Peter, thank you so much. It's great to have you with us. As always, appreciate your time. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because of your long journey and expertise in the public sector there in the United States. And I know you were raised, I think you were saying, on the East Coast, New York, and then in the early career, West Coast. And now that you find yourself there in Texas, perhaps you want to take us back to those early days, your journey from there to basically supporting in the mayor's office, the special projects team there at City of Plano.
Sure. So I grew up in New York on Long Island in a place called Babylon. All four grandparents were born in Germany. Two had emigrated to the United States on my father's side. My father was born here. He actually grew up speaking German before he learned English. You can tell he's 89, so you can tell how long ago that was. And so I grew up sort of half in and half out of both cultures. While they're similar, they're completely different at the same time. I always joke that I was not raised an American because my parents didn't know how. But in any event, I went to school as a small engineer school called Clarkson in very far north New York. It's actually closest city is probably Ottawa than it is to anywhere else in New York. In any event, I started my career as a highway designer. I was designing highways in New York for about 4 years. And then I wanted a change. I decided I would move to Los Angeles. So I lived in Los Angeles for about 16 years, doing mostly civil engineering projects all in and around transportation, including airports and train systems. And as part of that, I was part of an organization that was putting a light rail train from downtown Los Angeles to Pasadena. And so part of that project needed to raise funds by selling real estate or jointly developing transit-oriented development around the train stations. Luckily, it was in Pasadena, which was a hot commodity then. And so we could raise, I think it was like $20 or $30 million to support the project by developing real estate. Really got interested in doing real estate and redevelopment. And so a job came open here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Luckily, my partner at the time also had a transfer here to Dallas. So it worked out for the better. And I started for a different city here in just north of Dallas, redeveloping their train stations that were just about to open. Light rail train transit, one of which was a historic downtown. It was a typical Texas downtown with a square that was sort of founded in the turn of the 20th century, but it hadn't really seen any development in ever. The original buildings were still there, which was great. So it was benign neglect. And so what we did is we put people living back down there. We built a lot of multifamily or sponsored a lot of multifamily, got restaurants back involved into the square, redeveloped the square, turned into a parking lot. We put it back to a park. And so we did a lot of work to really create a space and become a real town center once again for the city. When I first started, people didn't even know it existed. And now everybody definitely knows that it exists and are happy to go there. With that success, I got recruited here to Plano about 10 years ago now. And to do this more or less the same thing, my job has morphed a little bit as we moved on. I am now in charge of retail redevelopment. The city of Plano is an older city. It's already over 150 years old, which is old for the United States. Saw a lot of growth in the 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and 2010s. And so the 70s shopping centers are seeing their age. And so the city's ethos is really, our tagline is a city of excellence, but our ethos really is to get out of in front of things before they get anywhere near depressed. So we started a program for retail redevelopment on how we can reshape these shopping centers, which really become centers for the neighborhoods as they were developed. Four-corner retail is what we call it. And so how do we help the owners move into the next phase of what retail is in America? So we do that. I also augment our economic development efforts by providing concierge service to people who are coming into the city. Big companies like Toyota North America, which is headquartered here, they built 2 million square feet of office, which is huge. Very proudly, we did that from the day they bought the property to they moved into their office was exactly 36 months. And so that created a whole team effort, all the different departments and coordinators. And so special projects led that.
One of the themes that we see common throughout all of these interviews is the diverse and creative professional path that each person has followed to arrive at a smart city expert role. Do you think there's a reason for that?
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I mean, nobody likes change, but if you're going to be forced into change, you should actually embrace it, right? And so, there's a show on public television here about connections and how, they led from the first person who struck a spark with a rock to, how rockets are made. kind of connections. And I see that in my own career path where we had lost a big project. I was working for a big firm here, which would redo an airport in Los Angeles. And so we lost that project because the public pressure basically killed it off. And so I ended up having to find a new job. And that job led to the work at the construction authority on the light rail to Pasadena. That led to real estate, that led to Carrollton, led to where I am today. And it's just embracing the change and learning new things. And it's just, I have a great time doing my job. And so it's been fun, especially for the last 19 years here in Texas, because it's every day is something different. I also get assigned duties, other duties as assigned, which is the joke in every job description here in the United States, which is now I'm lead the effort on design and construction of all new city ground up facilities. We had a bond election and the voters approved the sale of bonds to construct about $280 million worth of buildings.
It's an interesting model that you use in Plano to approach the development of the city center or downtown. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Plano is rather large in its scale. It's 72 square miles. And so it's also disparate in its age. I'm sitting in downtown Plano, which started 150 years ago. It still has brick streets and brick buildings, and we've kept it that way because that's what people really enjoy. They want that connection to some authentic thing. We also have new development on the furthest west, which is about 25 minutes from here. It is called Legacy West. It's a new high street in the new sense of retail, mixed use. It's got apartments, multifamily condos, office buildings, headquarters of big companies, and a lot of retail and restaurants. And so, interestingly enough, it's a typical high street. It is 4 or 5 blocks long with retail on the bottom of both apartments. Apartments happen to be on one side, office on the other, because of the ownership structure, but it works out really wonderfully that it's completely walkable and is a huge, huge success.
It's one of the things that's always got my attention when you've talked about your work, and that it is very much comprehensive in your approach, but also you can feel the individual perspective down to, walking the high street brick by brick and making the comprehensive feel very familiar. It's a nice balance that you strike.
Retail today, in my opinion, is all about having an authentic experience. It's definitely experiential. I heard an expert once say that every shopkeeper only has 25 seconds to create an emotion. Otherwise, people just turn around and walk back out. It's over, and the emotion has to start on the right because people turn right first. And so you have to have something that brings people in right by the front door on the right side. Otherwise, you lose them. And it's about creating an emotion. And I think that's the same thing with high street and development of places. You have to create that emotion. And that can be a sense of belonging, a sense of wonder. And so that's what we try to do everywhere. And in the old part of Plano, historic downtown, we're doing that with events and art and things like that.
Is there a gender lens that you bring to the designing and development of downtown?
I never thought of it that way. I don't know if that's the case. I think retailers definitely pick a gender in the sense of what they try, who they're trying to sell. I think today, I hate to use the word young people, I think they're less concerned about gender. People in their 20s, they just want to have a good time and feel like they belong somewhere. And so if you're creating those kind of places.
I mentioned gender. Well, I mentioned gender in all of these podcasts because in my research, it became very clear that there was very little attention given to gender considerations in the projects that I researched. And these were projects between, say, 2018 and 2024. And I'm now looking at specifically transportation and active mobility in cities. And the world, looking at that world through a gender perspective is absolutely necessary. The way you've described your city, it always struck me. And now you're using phrases like, you have to appeal to their emotion. It seems like somebody along the way has been looking through a gender lens.
Maybe I have, and I've not been conscious of it. The discussions about gender come up when we talk about public safety. And we talk about paths to parking garages and how the parking garages look and are lit. One of my projects is the redevelopment of a regional mall. And that parking garage itself is tremendous. It's over almost 2,000 spaces, but it has 14-foot ceilings in it, which really line up to the levels of the old mall part. But it also creates, even though it's underground, it's very well lit and it does not feel enclosed. And you feel automatically safer because, and it's not, the lighting has not even been installed yet, but even during the day, you don't feel like you're in a cavern in underground. And I think while it was tremendously expensive, it's going to be a boon for the retailers because everybody will be comfortable going there.
Your city is an example of conversations and decisions and planning that have transcended the need to talk specifically about gender. Is it possible that yours is it?
It could be because for the last 40 years, the planning directors have been women.
Isn't that interesting? I wonder if there is a conclusion to be made there. And looking at the lists of the livable cities or the high quality cities or whatever those lists are that come out annually, look at the city planners of those and see the gender distribution.
Somewhere like Texas, where you are, high degree of dependency on cars as your mobility mode. Not like your New York City, where the vast majority of people will be using transit and public transport for that matter. So my question is really around how you make provision for, on the one hand, the needs of the demand, which is for car-based, at the same time thinking about these issues of trying to introduce a more effective public transportation system, but you may be dealing with densities which are problematic. I know you're saying you're not a planner, but surely when you're thinking about your retail, these are things you're having to think about, that last walkable moment where you jump off either transit or your car to get to that moment where you have, how many seconds did you say? 30 seconds to make your choice, irrespective of gender. Yeah. And hey, I love to shop. So, what can I say?
There's a couple of things that we're trying to do here. Our neighborhood centers are very car-centric. I mean, Plano does have public transportation. We're part of the broader Dallas area network. We're never going to have enough transportation to just rely on it because the way the city was planned in the 80s and 90s, even though we have a gridded network of streets a mile apart, which really helps mobility tremendously, it's just not, well, first of all, in the summer, it's just too hot, quite frankly. We have a lot of things to overcome. That being said, the shopping centers that we have walls around them, especially when they face the single-family housing behind them. A lot of times those people who could walk, because it's just not even that far, there's barriers for them to walk. So we're interested in breaking those barriers down and finding ways to reconnect the shopping center to make itself walkable. We fully recognize that most every shopping center in Plano has been overparked, meaning we have way too many spaces. And so we've continually starting to relax our parking standards. Personally, I would do away with them, but we're just not there yet in a mindset. Retailers themselves think they need more parking than they do. We did a parking study, and the interesting factoid on that was people think parking lots are full only when they're 80% occupied. So at 80%, people think it's already full. There's a lot to overcome, and it's a cultural thing about cars in particular, but that doesn't mean we should not make those connections happen.
Your actions are based on very, very specific data that at some point a thoughtful person conducted research and arrived at conclusions that they then shared with City Hall. Can you speak to these evidence-based decisions that clearly seem to have been made in your city?
Take downtown Plano. The retailers have long complained they don't have enough parking. The retail itself does not have any dedicated parking, the buildings. It all relies on public parking, on-street parking, public lots, whatever. We always felt that there was enough. And so what we had to do is we had to prove our theorem that there was enough parking. And so we conducted our own parking study to say, okay, first of all, how many parking spaces do we have? How far are they from the shops? And are they being utilized at 100%? And the answer, of course, was no. Parking has always been interesting to me, so I follow along. I think the 80% number is from a different study years ago. And then there's also the old rule of Walmart, which is a super store, and their parking demand is the day after Thanksgiving, which is their big shopping day. And so they park their store for that one day. Otherwise, it's half full. And you can tell by aerial photographs that the parking field, some parking spots have never, ever been used because there's not like a drop of oil on any of the spots.
Wow.
So you can really find it. It's not hard to figure it out.
One of the things that we try to do with this podcast series is give people specific ideas that they can then put into action for themselves. And you are giving our listeners so many. I think we're going to need more conversations with perhaps other members of your team. Your city's model of protecting heritage while also planning for the future, while at the same time keeping enormous industry and commercial operations in check. That's quite a balance you're striking.
I mentioned already this gridded street network we have. That was a decision made back now 40 years ago. It's really helped us in the sense of these large boulevards that crisscross the town to keep transportation moving and easy. It's not hard to get across. We continually invest money in all kinds of things to help traffic move efficiently. We're now busily changing out all the traffic signal cabinets because they weren't big enough for the new computer modeling to help with a traffic control center that now can monitor and change signalization if we need it without having to go out to each cabinet and change it manually. Then came the cell phone system, so you could at least keep them all on the same clock. The first big trigger on traffic control was just to have a common clock on all the traffic signals because some are like behind. It makes a difference when you're setting timing on traffic. And so now we're moving off, and now they're all connected with fiber optic network to a center here at City Hall. And we're moving to fully automate it and do these things. And so a lot of cities just don't spend the money on that because they have other priorities. Plano citizens continually give us bond money to do improvements. And we're always out ahead. Now, they complain where every road is under construction, but we're out ahead of it failing. That's just the ethos of the organization that we have, which is we are the city of excellence. We're going to get it. We're going to do stuff before it gets bad, and we're going to keep up with our infrastructure. My role is in sort of bridging economic development or in economic development from a very deep level, if you will, or micro level. And so I'm worried and bringing up ideas on how do we keep everything. I can't incentivize a restaurant to open, but I certainly can make a place where a restaurant would want to open because restaurants are bad investments for cities, but I have in the past invested in a restaurant because we needed one. Even retail, there's just too much of it. I can say that the Plano's always talked about how Plano was over-retailed, but we're at 96% leased in our retail centers. So something's going on because I think 4% vacancy is basically full because you're always going to have somebody out, right? Our citizens are going to these shopping centers. They're doing the convenience shopping. They're going to the restaurants. Some shopping centers have turned into 100% restaurants. So we're seeing all of that. And how do we react? And how do we make sure that if it's just a trend, we can support the trend for as long as we can, or we look for ways to just make everything better, even if it's just an aesthetic change.
You've mentioned a couple of times there, Peter, bond money.
Every state has similar things, but I'll be specific to Texas. There's 3 revenue sources. There's 2 main revenue sources for cities. There's property taxes, and then there's sales tax. We have, in addition to the state sales tax, we have a bit of a sales tax on it. We give 1 cent of our sales tax over to the public transit agency. Then we have property tax. Then there's fees, building permits and things like that. Those are our main revenue sources. To do big projects, you could rely on pay-as-you-go, but you get far behind. So you can go out to the tax-free bond market. This is an investment tool that people buy. It generally pays 5-6% because they're very secure. They're not risky investments. The percent of money you make on them is tax-free. They're used almost like government securities, like we call it the U.S. Treasuries. We pay more than a treasury, but it's still a very secure vehicle. We happen to have the perfect bond rating, so we can sell them at a really good rate that's affordable. So basically, bonds are a tool City uses to borrow money that are paid back over 20 years. To do that, you have to have a vote of the people, a vote of the citizenry. And I think in the last 20 years, every bond election has been approved but one, and that was for a theater, or a concert venue. We have some smaller ones, and I guess the citizens felt we didn't need a bigger one. Regardless, when it comes to roads or infrastructure or city buildings or parks, we always get massive approvals on these things. And parks is a big part of the city. Parks and libraries are a big benefit to us. And so we are known for both of them.
Well, you're getting a lot of love there from Beverly on the parks thing.
One of the things I've always said, no matter where I've lived, and I've had the privilege of living in some wonderful cities like Toronto and Vancouver and Sydney, Australia, and now here, Utrecht, I have said for years that a great city has great parks and great libraries. It's just part of what makes it a creative, vibrant, relaxed, place to be. So, how does one get a visa these days in the U.S.?
Good luck. Last night we had a council meeting, a city council meeting. And so we had conducted a citizen survey, which we do every so many years. And satisfaction of our respondents was 92% satisfied. And so I think we must be doing something right. City services was a little less. We were only at like 85%.
Wow.
There's certain politicians around the world who would take those numbers with a blink of an eye, Peter. So you definitely, as you say, doing something right. Talking of doing something right, I'm not sure if you've looked at your calendar in recent days or months. I know you've just come back from a period of leave, but it's going to be 10 years, a full decade that you've served at Plano in just over a month's time in November. I wanted to take you back that full decade to 2015 when you walked in through the door there. I think the office is within the mayor's office, if I'm not mistaken, or was. City managers, there you go. What was the environment you walked into then, Peter? And how, sort of the key challenges you faced, and have those either continued over the decade or have they changed quite dramatically given technology? We've had COVID as a big disruption in that period. Yeah, what's your take on the 10 years that you've been there, the things that you look back on?
I think when I walked in, the biggest project was that Toyota's North American headquarters. The department, I'm the second director. The first director was the planning director who then moved into special projects. She did that for about a year. They figured out they needed somebody to coordinate just communication amongst the departments so that we could really react to the speed that Toyota was requesting. They've now been surpassed, but we're our biggest taxpayer for a decade. But regardless, my point is that I knew what the job was, but I didn't know what to expect. What I walked into was an organization the executive team is 25 of us who do everything from police chief to animal control. I have to say it's the most professional group of people I've ever worked with in my whole career. Everyone's nice and they're supportive and they want you to succeed. And that's been the culture here for long before I got here. And so it's just a happy place to come to work. We've had our challenges, things like COVID, or we had a windstorm that just tore through the city. But I think what we all come back to is we're all happy to come to work every day. While we have professional challenges of getting deals done or things not working out or a project you really wanted to land didn't come. But I think in the end, I'm working in such a supportive environment that those things, while they matter, it doesn't affect you or slow you down.
Part of your environment, though, and your network involves associations. It would be valuable for our listeners to understand how you network and with whom you network to keep yourself current and informed. That allows you to maintain the excellence in your office. Can you speak to those groups?
Sure. I think the main one, I'm involved in several, but the main one that has given me the most support in my last 20 years of career, or 19 actually, is the Urban Land Institute. It's an international organization. They're all over the world, and it really is about real estate education in a weird way, in the sense of when I first got into my role here in Texas, I had no idea what a pro forma was. And so they gave classes on how to do a pro forma. I think they don't do in-person classes. Everything's now on webinars. But the education piece that I got from Urban Land really I still can't do a pro forma. I completely understand what they are. So when we're talking about it, I understand them. And so I got involved with Urban Land at the local level, and now I'm involved more at a national level. I'm locally, I'm the co-chair of our P3, or Public-Private Partnership Product Council, which is their term for an affinity group. And then I'm also on one of the national product councils for public-private partnerships. I must say, every time I go to a meeting, I learn one thing, and at least one thing. But I always say, if I can take one thing that will change something here, it's a successful meeting. I think that's really what happens. And Urban Land Institute, what I like most about it, it's similar to here at the city. They're all supportive and there's no secrets. That's what makes it such a great organization, is people, you can go and say, hey, I have this thing. I'm going to sell this land. I got permission last night to sell this land to a hotel. Who can advise me on how to set up the sale document so that it will actually get sold for what we want it to do? And there's people who will help you. Not only do they have technical resources online, but it's a great social network of people who want to help you succeed.
You've given our listeners a checklist of something to do to continue their own professional development. Find an association that is national, perhaps international, where they can go and find, as you just said, something, just even if it's just one thing per event that will help them make their cities better.
Absolutely.
I know this is not your first rodeo on the podcast medium. Tell me, in your experience and your thinking, your work, and you've just now talked about collaboration and how important that is. How do you think outlets like podcasts, YouTube videos, there's so much rich content there, a lot of rubbish, but there's some really good stuff if you go looking for it. Just your sense of it. And I know City of Plano, its own podcast is Inside Plano, if I'm not mistaken. So people can check that out. Your thinking around how we communicate as professionals, as interest groups, working between different built environment sectors. Just where do you think this is going and how important is it?
It's tremendously important. We have some tools that are better than others. I think we all use LinkedIn, but at the same time, because I'm a public employee, we have a very public face. And I don't know that we ever can communicate enough, because there's always somebody who can say, I never heard that. We put out, as a city, it's a constant stream of information we can't do every channel, so we limit it to those channels we can easily do. So Inside Plano is definitely run. We had our media director of media relations was a TV reporter. And we have a new one who also was a TV reporter. So they completely understand how to communicate that way, and they teach us how to do that. And so I think interviews, doing podcasts, all these things are really important to get the word out on what you're doing. At the same time, I use social media when in the previous city I worked at to attract business and create a place that nobody knew about. And so before everybody else was using it, I was using it in 2006 and Facebook and Instagram or whenever they came online to do things that nobody else was doing. And people were questioning, why was I doing that? But I have to say that we used Twitter, I think at the time, to contact a restaurateur who made a big difference. And because they came to downtown, people started to understand there was a downtown. And so while I say I don't like to incentivize restaurants, sometimes you need to, because it's that catalyst to make a change. And quite frankly, it was Twitter who helped us do it.
We've just had Amazon opening a big office here in Cape Town over the last year or so. So it's a global thing. And obviously that has had a significant impact on, let's call it, traditional retail. And we know that that's an ever-evolving model, which is regional shopping centers you mentioned, which have hammered the CBD and the CBDs. So it's a cyclical thing, but this has been a major disruptor, I guess, over the last 10 and more years. How do you see that as a threat or as an opportunity to complement and augment traditional retail space there?
You're absolutely right. The retail has changed. It's still going strong, though. We're seeing online retailers only who've now opened brick and mortar stores because in the end, most people want to touch something and create that experience. How do you see it? There are several retailers that we have in Legacy that are shops that are open, but you can't walk out with anything, but you certainly can try it on and touch it. And so it is morphing. It is changing. I like to go shopping, but I need to touch it. I need to see it. I need to try it on. Those kind of things are still important. But again, it comes back to, are you going to a place where you're having an experience and creating emotion? Are you going into a shop going, I cannot live without this thing? Or is it something where you can get off of Amazon and it doesn't really matter?
I think it's fascinating. It'd be interesting to see how that either continues to shape up or starts to change in its own way.
What are your priorities in the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
I have to spend $280 million building new buildings, including a police headquarters, a couple of fire stations, we're doing a police academy, and also a service center for all the city vehicles. I have one employee getting a second employee to help me do all that. They're going to be doing all the work. I'm just going to be guiding them through that. And so then it's also things keeping Plano moving forward on economic development and supporting those efforts with my concierge service, which is really helping them through the development process, which really in the end becomes just facilitating communication is really all I do. We do weekly meetings on big projects, and it's getting everybody in the room for 15 minutes to talk about issues that something has come up and why haven't you done it yet? But it's all collaborative. And so really what it gets the owner or the developer and his consultants and our staff together in one meeting, and everybody can hear the same message at the same time, which is tremendously important to keep projects moving. So that work will still continue. And then I'm in charge of all city real estate. So we're supporting all the big projects with easements and widenings or whatever we need. But we're also doing things like going to sell some land near our convention center for a garage a hotel. We're trying to do some townhouses nearby as well as some retail. So there's always something new popping up and happening.
I'm wondering how much attention in that future planning is toward senior citizens.
It's significant here. One of the benefits of living in Plano is we do a tax freeze for seniors. So everybody over 65, your property taxes are frozen, at least for the city's share. We also have an active senior center. We're actually looking for a place to build a second one where they can gather and have events and work out and all kinds of things. So seniors are really important. We've seen a growth of that exemption it's doubled over the last 2 years, actually. People are moving here to retire into Plano, which is interesting. We're going to, it is important, and it's not a worry, but it's always in our mind about things like independent living and things like that. So some of our big projects do have independent living components in them.
I think you've given us a lot to think about, Peter, not just in terms of how you have developed your career, what's kept you busy for the last 10 years, but this idea of, as you say, the prioritization, the thinking of what's in the future and how you're going to need to continuously adapt. Thank you so much for sharing these thoughts with us and for the time. I think you're saying you're taking a group on a tour this morning, so very best of luck. Hopefully that brings in some more investment dollars into the city's revenue. Beverly, I'm going to leave it to you to thank Peter, and looking forward to catching up with you again before too long, Peter. Thanks for your time today.
I'm happy to do it again. It was a pleasure.
I think any listener of this podcast could take a very strong framework from all your remarks and use that as a model to build their own projects or programs, maybe not an entire European city, but certainly parts of it. And you've given our listeners so much operational knowledge, I think, based on clear facts and broad stakeholder engagement. That is an inspiration to many, many, many of us. So yes, of course, we'll have you back. And I'm looking forward to talking more about female leadership in cities of excellence.
Well, I can tell you, we have the directorships are split pretty much evenly between women and men. And then our deputy city managers, there's 4 of them. It's also split 50-50.
Excellent. Good to know.
More strength.
Yep.
Yes, exactly. The world awaits, I think, in the form of a tour for you. So we'll let you go. Thank you again, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All the best, Peter. Bye-bye. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the CitiesR4Living podcast of the IPMA, the International Project Management Association. Please feel free to send us feedback, your thoughts on the content we've provided, and if you'd like to get involved, via sur@ipma.world. The SUR standing for Smarter Urban Rural, one of the task teams that's alluded to in one of our pilot episodes. So sur@ipma.world. We'd love to hear your feedback, and please get in contact. Tell us what you think.